The town of Pine Ridge, Colorado, looked like a scene straight out of a Christmas postcard that night. Snow drifted lazily from the black sky, settling softly on rooftops, empty streets, and frozen pine trees that stood tall like silent guardians. Street lamps cast a warm golden glow over the white ground, but beneath that beauty lay an unsettling stillness. Most families were inside, gathered around fireplaces, sipping hot cocoa, and laughing over holiday memories. Yet something about this Christmas Eve felt different, heavier, colder, and strangely tense, as if the night itself was holding its breath. Inside the Harper home, Christmas lights twinkled in shades of red, green, and gold, reflecting off ornaments that hung carefully on a freshly cut pine tree. David Harper, a hard-working engineer in his late 30s, moved quickly through the living room, checking his watch again and again. His wife had passed away years earlier, so this holiday trip to Chicago with his son Ethan was meant to be a fresh start, a way to heal old wounds. Luggage sat neatly by the door, wrapped presents filled the backseat of their dark green sedan, and the smell of cinnamon and pine lingered in the air. 10-year-old Ethan bounced around excitedly, wearing a red sweater and a tiny Santa hat that tilted comically to one side. He kept asking his father, "Are we going to be late? Will we see real snow clouds from the plane?" David smiled, trying to hide his own anxiety about driving through the icy mountain roads. Outside, the wind howled faintly through the trees, rattling windows like distant whispers. Still, everything looked calm, almost too calm. Neighbors watched from behind their curtains as David loaded the last suitcase into the trunk. Mrs. Carter next door later told police that she remembered hearing them laugh together, their breath visible in the freezing air. "Merry Christmas," David called out as he shut the car door, his voice cheerful yet slightly strained. The engine roared to life, headlights cutting through the swirling snow like two sharp beams of light piercing the darkness ahead. At exactly 8:17 p.m., the green sedan rolled slowly down the driveway, tires crunching over fresh snow. The garage door closed behind them with a final metallic echo, and the house lights remained glowing, a Christmas tree still shining brightly in the living room window. As the car disappeared down the quiet street, no one noticed the strange pair of headlights watching from the far end of Black Ridge Road, hidden in the falling snow, waiting. As the night deepened, Pine Ridge grew quieter than ever. By 9:30 p.m., most families had retreated indoors, curtains drawn tight, fireplaces glowing, and Christmas music playing softly in the background. The snowstorm grew heavier, thick white flakes spinning wildly in the wind, reducing visibility to only a few feet. On the main highway leading to the airport, plow trucks moved slowly, their orange lights flashing like warning beacons in the blinding darkness. Yet somewhere along Black Ridge Road, the Harper's green sedan never appeared. By 11 p.m., the first concern arose in Chicago when relatives realized David and Ethan had not called after landing. At midnight, the airport officially confirmed that their names were not on the passenger list for any flight that night. Phones rang endlessly inside the Harper house, echoing through empty hallways and bouncing off silent walls. The answering machine blinked with missed calls, while the Christmas tree lights continued to shimmer, completely unaware that something terrifying had already happened. At 2:15 a.m., Officer Grant Mitchell was dispatched to check on the Harper residence. He found the house unlocked, lights blazing, and a half-filled mug of hot chocolate still sitting on the kitchen counter. The TV was left on low volume, snow softly crackling across the screen. In the living room, neatly wrapped gifts lay untouched beneath the glowing tree, and David's coat hung exactly where he always left it. Nothing looked disturbed, yet everything felt horribly wrong. Search parties began forming before dawn. Snowmobiles, patrol cars, and rescue teams combed the highways, ditches, and mountain paths. Footprints were swallowed almost instantly by fresh snowfall, and tire tracks vanished beneath thick drifts. Helicopters hovered low over Black Ridge at first light, their rotors slicing through swirling snow, but saw only endless white fields and frozen pine forests stretching into the distance. No crash site. No broken glass. No abandoned car. No sign of life. By Christmas morning, the disappearance had turned into a full-scale mystery. Families gathered for breakfast while police gathered for emergency briefings. News vans rolled into Pine Ridge, their cameras pointed toward the quiet Harper home. Neighbors whispered in hushed tones, some crossing themselves, others staring uneasily toward Black Ridge Road, where the storm still raged, hiding whatever truth lay buried beneath its icy surface. Years rolled by in Pine Ridge, but the night David and Ethan Harper vanished never truly faded. At first, the town tried to move on. Businesses reopened after the holidays, children went back to school, and life resumed its ordinary rhythm. Yet beneath that normality lingered an unease that seeped into every snowy winter. Each December, when Christmas lights glowed along Main Street, many residents felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold. People still avoided talking about the Harpers directly, but their names hovered silently in every gathering, every dinner table, and every church sermon. Black Ridge Road slowly gained a grim reputation. Teenagers dared each other to drive there at night, while older residents warned them in hushed voices. That road remembers. Some claimed that on stormy Christmas Eves, they saw faint headlights flickering through the falling snow, moving far too slowly to belong to any living driver. Others swore they heard a distant car horn echoing through the mountains, followed by the sound of tires crunching over ice. No one could prove it, but no one dismissed it either. Local diners became places of whispered theories. At the Pine Ridge Cafe, truckers and farmers would lean over steaming cups of coffee, speaking in low tones about what they believed happened that night. Some said the Harpers must have skidded off the road into a hidden ravine. Others believed they had been chased. A few even suggested something supernatural, that the mountain itself had swallowed them. Every version of the story grew darker with time, turning fact into folklore. Children who grew up after the disappearance learned about it like a cautionary tale. Parents would say, "If you're out late in the snow, remember the Harpers." The story became woven into the identity of Pine Ridge, almost like an unwritten chapter of its history. But instead of bringing closure, each retelling deepened the mystery, leaving behind more fear than answers. Through all of this, the Harper house stood untouched for years, lights off, curtains drawn, and snow piling up against its silent walls. Occasionally, strangers would slow their cars in front of it, staring at the dark windows as if expecting to see movement inside. The town never forgot the father and son who left happily on Christmas Eve and never came back. 26 years later, Pine Ridge had changed in small but noticeable ways. New houses dotted the outskirts of town, a modern gas station replaced the old diner, and traffic along the highway had grown heavier each year. To ease congestion, state officials approved a new expansion project near Black Ridge Road, a wider highway cutting through a stretch of land that had always been considered remote, rugged, and almost untouched. Locals watched the project with mixed feelings, some welcoming progress, others uneasy about disturbing what they believed was resting ground. In early November 2023, massive construction machines rumbled onto the snowy terrain. Bulldozers ripped through frozen earth, excavators clawed at thick layers of soil, and bright floodlights illuminated the site long after sunset. The workers joked to pass the cold hours, drinking coffee from thermoses while metal scraped loudly against rock beneath their boots. Yet even they admitted that something about this area felt strange, too quiet, too isolated, as if the land itself resisted being disturbed. Late one night, around 1:47 a.m., a deep, metallic clang echoed across the site as a digger's blade struck something solid underground. The operator felt a violent jolt through the machine, causing sparks to fly briefly in the darkness. Work came to an immediate halt. The crew gathered around with flashlights, their beams slicing through swirling snow, revealing only churned mud and frozen dirt. But whatever lay beneath it was clearly not natural rock. As they carefully began clearing away layers of soil, a curved piece of rusted metal emerged. It was pale green beneath decades of corrosion, coated in ice and packed dirt. A broken headlight, still attached, glinted faintly in the artificial light. The workers fell silent. No one joked anymore. A foreman stepped closer, brushing snow from the surface and realizing, with growing dread, that they were staring at the roof of a buried car. Within minutes, police were called, followed by forensic teams, tow trucks, and news reporters who arrived faster than anyone expected. The excavation area turned into a crime scene overnight, orange tape fluttering in the freezing wind, officers murmuring in tense voices, and floodlights casting harsh shadows across the snow. Beneath all of it, the hidden vehicle lay half exposed in the earth, as if it had been waiting silently for 26 years to be found. By dawn, the buried car had been fully unearthed, and the sight of it made even hardened officers fall silent. The vehicle was twisted, crushed on one side, and coated in decades of rust, ice, and compacted soil. Its once dark green paint was barely recognizable, peeling away in jagged patches like dead skin. The windshield was shattered into a web of cracked glass, and the driver's side window hung loosely from broken metal. Bright forensic lights glared off the wreckage, making it look even more grotesque against the pale snow. When investigators carefully opened the doors, a chilling reality emerged. Inside the front seat sat the skeletal remains of an adult male, still strapped into a seatbelt, his hands frozen in position over what had once been a steering wheel. In the back seat, smaller remains were found curled slightly to one side, clearly that of a child. Personal belongings scattered around them confirmed what everyone already feared. This was David and Ethan Harper, missing for 26 years. Forensic experts moved slowly, treating the site with the precision of a battlefield recovery. Cameras clicked, evidence bags were filled, and specialists documented every inch of the vehicle. What unsettled them most was that the car did not look like it had simply crashed. The front bumper bore deep, irregular dents, as if another vehicle had rammed it from behind with deliberate force. Scratches along the driver's side suggested the car had been pushed, not merely lost control. As teams examined the surrounding soil, they found signs that the vehicle had been intentionally buried. Layers of disturbed earth, mixed with compacted gravel, indicated that heavy machinery or a tow truck may have been used years ago. This was not an accident hidden by nature. It was a crime carefully concealed. Officers whispered among themselves, realizing that Pine Ridge's longest mystery was turning into something far darker than anyone had imagined. Even more disturbing were faint markings inside the car, broken glass scattered inward, not outward, and traces of fabric torn from the seats. A cracked rearview mirror still reflected the frozen interior, and in its dull surface, investigators thought they could almost see the terror that must have filled that Christmas night, a moment trapped forever beneath the earth, waiting to be uncovered. As investigators dug deeper into the past, they began reopening files that had been locked away for more than 2 decades. Old witness statements, grainy surveillance photos, and forgotten police notes were pulled from dusty storage boxes and laid out across long tables in the Pine Ridge station. Patterns slowly began to emerge. Small details that had been overlooked in 1997 now stood out like bright red warning signs. One recurring name appeared again and again: Robert Mills, a quiet local mechanic who had owned a repair shop just outside town. Back in the late 90s, Mills had been known as a friendly, soft-spoken man who rarely caused trouble. He fixed engines, towed stranded vehicles, and even helped police with occasional roadside recoveries. But newly uncovered financial records painted a different picture. Large sums of cash had moved through his accounts around Christmas 1997, and several cars reported stolen in nearby counties had mysteriously passed through his garage. Investigators realized David Harper may have stumbled upon something dangerous, something that cost him his life. Former employees of Mills's shop were interviewed again, some now older, others long gone from Pine Ridge. One mechanic recalled that on Christmas Eve 1997, Mills had returned late at night covered in mud and acting strangely calm. He had told his staff, "If anyone asks, I was home all night." At the time, no one questioned it. Now, that single sentence felt like a confession wrapped in silence. Forensic evidence tied the buried car more closely to Mills than anyone expected. Tire impressions found years ago near Black Ridge, once dismissed as meaningless, matched a heavy tow truck that Mills had owned in the 90s. Traces of the same soil from the burial site were later discovered embedded in old tools recovered from his abandoned garage. Piece by piece, the truth formed like a chilling puzzle no one wanted to complete. What terrified detectives most was realizing how ordinary Mills had appeared all these years. He had attended town parades, donated to charity, and even lit candles at Christmas services for missing families. Meanwhile, beneath the frozen earth of Black Ridge, David and Ethan Harper lay hidden, victims of a secret that had been carefully buried, not just in soil, but in decades of lies, smiles, and false normality. When police finally moved to arrest Robert Mills, Pine Ridge was already buzzing with fear. News helicopters circled overhead, neighbors stood on sidewalks whispering, and patrol cars lined the streets like silent sentinels. Officers approached his modest brick house at dawn, weapons drawn, believing they might face resistance. The yard looked normal, snow neatly shoveled, porch light still glowing faintly, and a wreath hanging crookedly on the front door. Yet an unnatural stillness hung over the property, as if the house itself knew something terrible was about to be revealed. Inside, detectives found no sign of a struggle, no broken furniture, no scattered belongings, no frantic escape. The living room was tidy, the kitchen spotless, and the television still plugged in. On the dining table sat a half-empty cup of cold coffee, a folded newspaper, and a single sheet of plain white paper weighted down by a silver key. Everything felt staged, almost theatrical, like a final performance meant to unsettle anyone who entered. The note on the table was written in neat, deliberate handwriting. "If they can come back from the ground, so can I." Officers exchanged uneasy glances. Some felt a chill crawl up their spines. Others tried to mask their discomfort with professional composure. There was no address, no explanation, no confession, only those cryptic words that seemed to blur the line between guilt, madness, and something far darker. Search teams combed Mills's property for hours. They checked basements, sheds, attics, hidden crawl spaces, and even dug up parts of his backyard. His old tow truck was gone. His personal belongings were mostly intact. There were no passports, no packed bags, no clear sign of where he might have fled. It was as if Robert Mills had simply vanished into thin air, the same way the Harpers had, decades earlier. As night fell, residents of Pine Ridge grew increasingly uneasy. Patrol cars still roamed the streets, but fear lingered in every home. Some claimed they saw headlights moving slowly along Black Ridge Road again, while others heard distant engine sounds echoing through the mountains. And somewhere out there, in the deep snow and frozen darkness, Robert Mills remained missing, watching, waiting, or perhaps already gone beyond reach. In the months that followed, Pine Ridge was never the same again. The buried car was removed, the remains of David and Ethan Harper were finally laid to rest in a proper grave, and a small memorial was placed near Black Ridge Road in their honor. Families came with candles every Christmas Eve, leaving flowers, photographs, and handwritten letters beneath a wooden cross that read, "Gone, but never forgotten." Yet even in peace, the town carried a scar that time could not erase. The mystery of Robert Mills, however, remained unsolved. No trace of him was ever found, no body, no sightings, no records of travel, nothing. Some believed he died alone in the mountains, swallowed by the same land that hid his crime. Others whispered that he was still out there, driving through snowstorms, haunted by the ghosts of his victims. To this day, his disappearance lingers like a shadow over Pine Ridge. And every year, when the snow begins to fall and Christmas lights glow in every window, residents still glance nervously toward Black Ridge Road. Because on certain stormy nights, people claim they see a dim green car creeping through the blizzard, slow, silent, and impossible to catch. Perhaps it is just a legend. Or perhaps the past has not finished traveling that road.
If you liked this video, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Most importantly, subscribe and hit the bell icon so the next secret finds you first.